Just a Job is the podcast for the modern woman to redefine what success looks like. We highlight real women and their real stories. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Just a Job with Ellen and Sarah. If you think that we have this gorgeous glow about us, you would be correct because we got to spend Tuesday together. Tim and I made a large trip over to the East Coast, and we got to stop by and see and hang out with our Delaware buddies, Sarah and Michael. So there's part of my little update. We've got a gorgeous episode for you guys. We've got some fun updates, some fun stand-up things, and then we're going to jump into the interview with Taryn Tyler, teacher turned trainer. Say that 5 times fast. Hey, Sarah, how's it going?
Hi, Ellen.
Did Siri talk to you?
Unfortunately, that happens so often, and it's quite annoying. But yes, Miss S-I-R-I, not S-A-R-A, likes to think that she's me. But hello, happy Monday, everyone. Yes, we definitely have a glow because we got to hug each other. It was so nice. And the best part is that we have like so many more opportunities in the next few weeks to hug each other, and we're excited to share more about that. But we have quite a bit of stand-up notes, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in if that's okay. I guess one, because we have quite a bit, I'll just stick with one, is I want to share, I don't know if anybody saw it on TikTok, but Jessica Campbell, I'm going to pull up the article. Jessica Campbell, she made history this week and became the first ever female assistant coach in the NHL. And if there's anything we love, it's women making stride in male dominated spaces. And of course, I got this information via TikTok, and it was, the intro, I guess you could say, of her being announced at a game and just like seeing her emotion as the crowd is screaming for her made me so emotional and just made me realize like we need more of this. Like women deserve to hold spots at tables and ice rinks, sports facilities, all the above. And
Arenas.
It was really, really neat. And she's 31 and just like a badass, especially hockey, which is like compared to a lot of other male dominated sports, like hockey is rough, right? Like testosterone,
it's like very masculine.
Oh my gosh, yes. But her resume is super impressive. She's been with the it's the Seattle Kraken, their minor league team. She herself has won so many different awards within the women's hockey league, and it's just really fascinating. So if you get a chance, go check it out. Jessica Campbell and the Seattle Kraken, and I'm just like really proud. I don't even know her, but it's just really neat. So that's my one stand-up note. But Ellen, you have a few we've actually talked about, so let's hear it.
I know it's going to be review for us, but exciting for the listeners. But we love to see women in sports making strides in especially male dominated spaces. How incredible. Go Jessica. Snaps for her. Okay, a couple of things. Interesting articles that I've come across in the past week or so. One, Deloitte did some layoffs, which is always interesting when a really big, powerful company does layoffs. One, it's interesting, the timing, how they market it, how they announce it, and then what the fodder is afterwards.
Right.
And the couple of articles that I read was that this is kind of essentially a, not necessarily yearly, but it's what's the word I'm looking, not typical. What am I looking for?
There's like a cycle to it. It's cyclical.
Yes, there's a natural cadence to this, and this was just the time in which the layoffs were due, I guess. And it's just so interesting that like there's a certain tiering and level of, it's very hierarchical.
It's Friday. It's late.
Whatever. You know what I mean? There is an order of rankings for their employees. And there's like a certain subset that if you're in like lowest man on the totem pole to like middle man on the totem pole, then you were essentially one of, if you're in that set, you were let go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just interesting that they always pick on the small little guy and not the big, really expensive guy or girl.
I can't even imagine, especially, I didn't know this about Deloitte, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of those bigger, especially like Big Four, consulting, anything of that nature, where it's like you climb the ladder. That's the expectation, right? You join, you climb the ladder, you make the ranks. And in that, I don't know, like middle to low tier of climbing the ladder, at any point you could get the boot, right? So
Yeah,
it's this like kind of like fight to the death mentality. I don't know, maybe I'm being dramatic, but I can't imagine getting into it. And then once you make it past that point, you're kind of like in for the long haul, right? But you have to look back at all the like lost soldiers
yeah,
along the way. I don't know. It's interesting. Plus, two, it's like, would you agree to a job if you knew that there was this cycle of layoffs? I don't
exactly.
know.
And like when we were talking about it, we got on the subject of now being, oh my God, I graduated college, what, 8 years ago, something like that. And I've been in the corporate world for almost six. And in those 6 years, I have experienced 5 rounds of layoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about it that way, I'm like, holy shit, that's probably way more than the average person. But it's
Definitely.
also jaded my opinion of work significantly. So I have a very like cold hearted kind of sour attitude when it comes to loyalty with companies. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is a perfect example of that. So just, I don't know, interesting. It came across my desk and I said, this is something we need to talk about on the podcast.
Yeah.
So,
Check in on your friends at work at Deloitte.
so give them a hug,
Yeah.
maybe a job. if you're if
Good
you're
gander at the
able to.
resume. Yeah.
Exactly. Another fun, interesting article that I found on TikTok is titled "Why Gen Z is Saying No to Management." It's called, quote, conscious unbossing. And it says with 7 in 10 Gen Zers passing up better titles, how this is becoming a leadership problem. And it's really interesting because it just goes into detail saying that essentially the Gen Z population is looking up and seeing what it is like being a in middle management. And they're like, I don't want to do that. And they are like, I forget what the stat is. Oh, 72% say that they'd rather be individual contributors than middle managers. That is a huge percentage and extremely interesting because as someone who managed a team of 4 people for literally 3 weeks, I hated it. Oh my God, I hated it. And maybe, granted, I was only like maybe 3 years into my career, like corporate career,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I was young and inexperienced, which is probably a majority of it. But I was like, I don't want to deal with other people's BS nonsense, and like I can't do it. Maybe now I would have a different opinion, but my experience in doing it, I hated it, and I love being an individual contributor. I know that I can get my stuff done, and I'm responsible for me, myself, and I and the project in my particular role. But
Mm-hmm.
I resonated with this. And I think that's so 72% would
That's a
rather be an individual
lot.
contributor than a manager. That's crazy. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I have two thoughts on that. I think one, the idea of middle management is so twisted because
Yeah.
a lot of times you're not dropping responsibilities that you once held. It's additional work of managing people on top of executing what you've already done in your past life. And so I think that's why a lot of people are resistant to middle management because they don't see it as like, oh, I get to step away from what I was doing and now I get to just manage people and just manage people's work. No, 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 no. In most cases, like you take on another full time job in some sense because some companies just aren't structured in a way to support. So that's one thought. The second thought is a lot of people enjoy executing, right? Like they like being an individual contributor because they thoroughly enjoy the work that they do on a day to day basis and they find ways that they can level up instead of like leveling out and managing up. And I feel this way too, right? But a subset thing of that is like there are opportunities to manage people without necessarily managing people. And what I mean by that,
Ooh,
like,
yeah.
as a project manager is like I am managing people in some sense, right? Like I am managing the workload of currently like a team of 13 people, but I'm not managing them. I'm just managing the work that they have on a daily basis. And I think that that's an interesting balance because it allows me to have that like personal interaction and have some sense of responsibility and purpose. But at the end of the day, like I'm not their go-to person if they're having an issue or a concern. And so there's this layer of like removal from that.
Hmm.
And I think that that's like a really nice balance. So it's not that you have to do one or the other. It's just that in most cases, like middle management is just not set up to be successful for the people that are in it. So
Hmm.
honestly, I can't blame them.
I
Cannot blame
know.
them.
Exactly. Well, and I like your point about the PM lens too, because, it's definitely a skill to be able to influence and manage people that do not report to you, but you get a taste
Mhm.
of it, but you don't have to deal with all the bullshit.
Yeah,
All the paperwork and approvals and blah, blah, blah. So I like that
definitely.
take. So
Interesting.
there's all of my lovely articles and everything that I wanted to reference.
Thank
We
you.
have so many fun, exciting things coming up. Sarah, oh my gosh, we have incredible guests coming up. We've got a conference coming up. We've got trips and in person interviews coming up. Just a little sprinkle tease in there for
Our 1 year
everybody.
birthday or
I can't
anniversary,
believe that.
however we want to see it.
Like this time last year, we were like, had some of our first
Yeah.
recordings. Oh my God, that is
That's
crazy.
crazy. We need a little throwback.
We should. We should do. You remember with some of the recordings that we did where we kept like screwing up over and over and over, and we were so nervous because we were like, "What do we say?"
Bloopers. I
Yeah, little
know.
bloopers.
That's when it was
It was
so
cute.
uncomfortable to be
Mhm.
in front of the camera with a microphone in front of you. Ugh. Cringe.
It's still uncomfortable. There you go.
I know.
We've had a little bit of growth, right?
Never gets easier.
Anyways, thank you guys for coming to and listening to this gorgeous stand up. We are going to go into an interview with Taryn Tyler. I just am so obsessed with the name Taryn Tyler, teacher turned trainer. Like it's
Ugh, it's
rolls off the
perfect.
tongues, right? It's so perfect. She is incredible. Highly
Mhm.
recommend checking out her business. Again, teacher turned trainer. If you're in the Kansas City area and you have a dog, which that's like
Everyone.
85% of our listeners, go check her out. She's incredible. Please enjoy her episode and we'll see you next week. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. We're going to jump into an interview with Taryn Tyler. She is the owner and creator of Teacher Turned Trainer, a positive reinforcement dog training business in Kansas City. She was an elementary education teacher by trade, but has a strong passion for dogs her entire life. She's had the privilege of owning 3 different dogs in her adult life, and her goal is to take the special knowledge she's learned from each of them and apply it to all of her clients. We love another Kansas City gal joining us. Welcome, Taryn, to the podcast. How's it going?
It's good. Thank you guys for having me.
Very happy to have you. Again, we always have to do a shout out when people reach out to us through social media and pitch themselves. So always, always, always take that as a takeaway. You never know what doors this is going to open. Pitch yourself, send the message, and be bold. So good for you for doing that.
Thank you.
Taryn, I want to know first, we're going to kick it off. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
I had always said when I was a kid, there was 2 things I was going to do, and it was I was going to go to KU, and I was going to be a teacher. So, and now looking back, and I'm sure we'll get into it, I have just always been a planner. I've never really like gone outside of my plan. So for me, it was like I'm going to be a teacher. That's it. And like I didn't really look anywhere else. But I set my mind to being a teacher, and that's what I graduated with from KU. So
You're
Oh
just
my
very,
gosh.
you're
went
good
with
for
went
you.
with the goal. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And not just one, but both. You were like, I'm
Yeah,
doing both. Dang it.
yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. And did you grow up in Kansas City? And what was it like making that transition to KU, especially knowing that it was like your dream school?
Yeah, I've always been in the Kansas City area. Grew up all the way through school. My dad went to KU, so I mean, from literally birth, like we were giant KU fans, and there was just really no other option in my mind of like this is what I wanted to do. Getting to college, it's always I feel like it's always a different type of experience than what you're expecting, and you have to find your right people. I was in a sorority for a while, ended up not finishing. Like when I graduated, I wasn't in the sorority, so it was definitely in transition, like getting to KU and trying to find my footing and where I belonged and things like that. But I mean, going to a school like KU with like how full they are in their traditions and their backstory and stuff. Like there's really nothing like it, and it's still past graduation. I mean, like I said, we go to the games and try to be as inclusive in the culture as possible.
I always find the tradition and the loyalty that people have to schools, particularly in the Midwest, is so
Yes.
fascinating to me.
Hmm.
I grew up with really no loyalty to like any like sports team, college team, really anything at all. And then I went to Alabama, which is very rich with tradition.
Huge.
Oh,
Yes.
yes. And then now knowing so many people in the Kansas City area and their allegiance to whatever school, it's like, there's house divided license plates. I mean, it's
Oh, we
the
had
roots
one. My
run
sis
deep.
Oh yeah,
I love
my
that.
sister my sister went to K-State, and my sister's
Hmm.
not like she's not a sports fan. She doesn't really get into the competitiveness or anything like that, but
Hmm.
still, like my parents, they bought into it, and so you had KU and K-State. They had the house divided logo and all of that. Our family, my whole family lives in the Kansas City area and always has,
Hmm.
and we're very close. I mean, monthly gatherings, all of that stuff. And my cousin and aunts and uncles are all on the K-State side, and I mean, they take their loyalty like to the max. So it's really funny. I mean, we literally have not a house divided, like we have a family divided straight down the middle of like my family and immediate family are all KU. My cousin Haley, who's only 6 months younger than me, her whole family is K State. I mean, diehard K State. So it's been a crack up growing up with both sides and different functions and watching games or not watching games together because we're
Yeah.
getting a little too heated. Like it's funny.
I love that. Yeah, it sounds like the tradition was there. Again, the loyalty to KU. Walk us through college for you. You talked about trying to find your footing and find maybe a community or a place that you felt really comfortable. Talk to us
Yeah.
about what college was like and how you navigated that time.
I feel like I've always been a person. I mean, growing up from elementary school to high school, I've always been a person that, like, I have my toes dipped in all of these different pools. Like, high school, I was the varsity captain of the softball team. I was in orchestra. I was a bowler. I was the manager of the basketball team. I was spirit club president. Like I always just like wanted to try to find where I belonged. So going to college and almost feeling like I didn't necessarily have as many upfront opportunities like you have in elementary school, high school, and all of that. I went straight to a sorority because at KU it is such a big. It's actually a very small percentage of the population, but it seems like such a big deal that it was like, okay, this is what I want to try to do. And so I got into the sorority, and going through the sorority actually was not necessarily the place for me. I have my really core group of friends are all I met through the sorority, and that was the best thing that came out of it. But for me personally, and the type of person I am, I did not necessarily mesh well with the sorority standards and just really how they orchestrated and ran their day to day type of scenarios and things like
Hmm.
that. So I really did struggle in college trying to find my place. And I think that's kind of what led later on to my career change of, I had said my whole life that I was going to be a teacher, and that's the goal that I set for myself, and I followed it. But then getting into teaching and then feeling kind of lost and not like it was necessarily the place for me. And it, it took a long time for me to build that confidence of I can branch out, I can find other things. So going back to college, I wish I would have maybe not necessarily not done the sorority because like I said, like my best friends are from that community and I wouldn't trade them for the world, but maybe explore other options for myself around the entire campus, not just that one small portion, and figure out what my next move would be.
Hmm. It sounds like you had a ton of opportunities in high school, and I can resonate with that kind of like little fish, big pond, or big fish, little pond
Little pond, yeah.
transition. Yeah, to college. I mean, even if you grew up going to KU games and like had a sense of comfort and familiarity, it's making that transition. And at 18, you're like, I've kind of been involved in a lot, and I've been
Yes.
like recognized for that. And then you get into college, and a lot of times you're surrounded by similar people, and it's very interesting to navigate that transition, whether you're from a small town or a big town. But it sounds like
Yeah.
you know, found your footing, made friends. Were there any sort of organizations that you were involved in at KU specific to your area of focus?
I did some intramural sports a little bit. I was on the
Mm-hmm.
board for a few years of a group called Hilarity for Charity that raised money for Alzheimer's research, but never anything really teaching wise. I mean, I had the classes. I was in the School of Education, but
Mm-hmm.
nothing like out extracurricular from that. I guess dog wise, since that's my new career, is I did when I could. I volunteered at the Humane Society up there. So I guess that would be my only connection, to my current career and lifestyle. But it wasn't like I was seeking out those opportunities of, I wanted it all to be kind of under the same umbrella.
Mhm.
Sure. And the education field, I'm like, Ellen, you can speak to this too. I remember when you start doing student teaching, it's like the longest unpaid, but rather you're paying internship. And I remember like living, you know, by some friends that were in the teaching program, and it was like they would come home and it was like they were chewed up and spit out, and they were
Yeah.
just like by junior year, by senior year, you're just kind of like, oh God, is this
Yeah.
it? Like, did you, especially given that you went into this with like this expectation of like, I'm doing teaching and I'm finishing this, did you ever waver in that? And if so, no, okay.
Good
No,
for you.
I
Okay.
never
She stuck it
wavered. And
out.
to the point, I mean, and all, I'm an open book. My story, I feel like a lot of people will have similar experiences, but I ended up, I wasn't able to graduate in 4 years. It took me 5 years because
Wow.
it was the first time, and I was devastated because I was always, a straight A student all the way through school and stuff. And I had to take anthropology was one of the gen ed requirements to get into the School of Education, which I will argue like till I'm blue in the face because I still don't understand like why do we need to take anthropology to become an elementary education teacher? Like there's no correlation here. Why are you forcing these students I mean you're literally forcing them to bear through it. And I flunked. I straight up flunked class, and I am a studier. I take notes, I do all of it, and it was still the hardest class that I've ever taken. And since I did not pass it my freshman year, I could not apply to the School of Education on time. So I guess even then, like, could have been a situation of like, okay, is this really what I want to do? Do I want to switch gears? And it's just, I mean, I can be single track minded. And I was like, nope, I'm going to retake it. I'm going to pass it. I'm going to, get into the school and took me, I passed it my sophomore year and was able to apply, but it was a journey for sure.
College is such a hard time. Like, even if you
Yeah,
are steadfast in what you want to do and what your major is. And I think that's a really good lesson for any younger person going through like applying to college or even in college. Like, don't let that one class like remove your
deter you.
passion and
Hmm.
excitement.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And as someone who also struggled in college, I very much resonate with that because it's very easy to let that deter you and to let that get into your head and say, "Oh, you're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You need to go find something else." So, kudos to you for continuing down that path and saying, nope, this is not going to let me, go any other way. I'm still wanting to pursue education. Talk to us about graduation and maybe a little bit about student teaching. Like, did you know where you wanted to go post graduation in terms of either a school district or an age preference? What did graduation and post grad look like for you?
So student teaching, you had two separate placements. I did one placement that was in the Tecumseh district, which is kind of around the Topeka area. So I had done second grade in my first student teaching placement. Second student teaching placement was back in Johnson County in fourth grade. So coming out of those two student teaching placements, I kind of knew I wanted to be kind of right in that like middle age range. I ended up after that second student teaching placement, I moved back home at that time. And that's actually around the time that I dropped the sorority because I was living in Kansas City, like in the Shawnee, Kansas City area. and I could not keep up with the expectations and requirements of the sorority being up in Lawrence. So it didn't work out. And, I kind of moved back home until graduation. So being in that area, it was in the DeSoto district, which was a great district to work in. But like knowing my whole family was in Johnson County and my boyfriend is in Johnson County, like I just wanted to stay in that area. So I did, you had the school fairs and things like that. And so I ended up getting a really good feedback from the Shawnee Mission School District, which is where I grew up. So post graduation I was accepted into their early hire program, which meant you have a job with the district, but when you get hired, you don't know what school you're going to be at. You don't know what grade you're going to teach. We want you and we'll figure out the details later. So when I graduated, I had a job, didn't know anything past that. So that summer before I started teaching, ended up meeting with the school and met with the principal. And she told me that there was a third grade and a sixth grade position and asked me which one I would prefer. And I said I would prefer the third grade just because that's where I'm more comfortable and what I had more experience with. But I'm a team player. I'll take whatever. You guys just tell me what you need from me. Post interview, got a call that I got accepted into the sixth grade position. So I was like, okay, I can do this. It's very different from anything I've experienced, but hey, we're going to figure it out. And then like 2 weeks after that, she called me back and was like, actually, we're going to move you to the third grade position. And I was like, oh, okay, we're in better shape for my first year of teaching. It was kind of just a very streamlined process of like got into the first school district and just, followed it through until I figured out what position I was going to be in.
So yeah. I am just like, I'm learning a lot over here because I have a lot of teacher friends and that's just fascinating. So to everyone listening, I respect the hell out of you. Going back to like current, so you're in your third grade position. What was that first year like? Did it meet expectations, exceed, or maybe below expectations?
It's kind of funny because I feel like going through the education, the school of education, and then doing your student teaching is still a completely different ballgame than being responsible for your own class and your own students and just the makeup of how you want the year to be. So in certain ways, it completely exceeded expectations because sometimes you hear horror stories about the team that you get put on and the teachers that you're going day to day with. I got so lucky with that. The team, there was three of us. There was one girl. She was not a recent graduate, but she was brand new to the school the same year that I was. And now we have both moved on from the school. She's not even I guess neither of us are in education anymore. But we still are. She's one of my best friends. So it was a great camaraderie that came out of that. And the other woman that I taught with, she had been at the school, had been in third grade. She was a great mentor. And we're all kind of similar in age range, got along really well, did hangouts outside. So team wise, had completely exceeded expectations. The rest of like curriculum and students, I don't know if I would necessarily say that it was like below expectations, but it was so different. It was just, I don't know, maybe I had made the idea of being a teacher and having my own classroom, like I had made it up to be something else in my head that it necessarily wasn't realistic. So it was just very different dealing with the different types of student personalities, the parents, the communication, the ins and outs of the school and behavior plans and all of it. So it was very different than what I expected. I don't know if I would say it was below expectations because I feel like I still came out on top and had a successful first year of teaching when a lot of people feel like, they spend their whole first year drowning. I didn't necessarily feel like that, but it was very different than what I had expected it to be.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned having a really good, like solid team around you. So you had the support of others that worked for the school where, again, like you said, the student work was different from what your expectations were. Were you able to have like a mentor or people around you that gave you really good advice? And if so, what was that for managing your expectation versus the difference in your first year of teaching?
They give you a mentor teacher for your all first year teachers, whether you're right out of graduation or you're brand new to that school, you get a mentor teacher that kind of guides you and you have like monthly meetings and things like that. So the girl that started at the same time that I did in third grade, we both had the same mentor, which was awesome. And she was a teacher. She ended up, when she was our mentor, she was a specialist at the school, but she had been a classroom teacher and had actually taught some of the kids that were now in our classes. And she knew some more background information to kind of help us communicate with them. So, I mean, that was having the mentor teacher like that was a game changer of just having a community even outside of your own grade team that could help you guide through all of the different mishaps that could happen in your first year of teaching. It was,
Yeah, that's great.
That is so important. And I feel like I have a friend who's a teacher, and she loved being able to return the favor as she gained experience flipping the script and going back. She was like, it's crazy how much she's been doing it for 6 or 7 years. And she's like, it's crazy how much you learn each year. And also too, from her perspective, how much you learn from mentoring. Like your mentee has just as much that they can offer you as you have to offer them. So
yeah.
we know in your story, you start to shift gears. I want to get into those, kind of moments where you're starting to realize like maybe teaching isn't my forever career. Was there a certain moment where it kind of dawned on you, or did you have a series of events that led to your decision to change?
I would say it was really that whole last year of teaching that made my decision. It was post COVID. So during COVID, when COVID really hit, all of our kids were sent home at spring break and didn't come back after that. So then the year that when we came back in that August for school, it was all of the parents were either they could choose to have their students online or they could choose to have them in person. But at the beginning of the year, there was not a hybrid model. So two of the four third grade teachers ended up having to teach online. I was one of those teachers. During COVID, I had 27 third graders online that ended up being from four different schools throughout the district, which was not necessarily what it was supposed to be. But still, like I actually enjoyed teaching online more than I expected to. It brought out more of a creative side in my teaching. Like I had a character, I had characters. Every Friday it was DJ Mrs. T. So I would dress up in costumes and I would play like, remixed music and stuff, and we'd have dance parties, and it was kind of exciting to create the type of curriculum that we had to use online because it wasn't like they were in front of us. But that year that I taught online, we had a new principal that came into the school. And so then you come back, and it was my fifth year of teaching. I got moved to a new grade with a completely different team, not by choice. I was placed in a different team by this principal. But the year that I ended up resigning, 11 teachers from my building resigned that year. And a lot of them were because of direct issues with this principal. So that really played a part into it. I had a student that came into my classroom that was the most difficult student that I had throughout my teaching career. Like at one point, I was wearing like a server apron and carried everything that was valuable to me as a teacher in this apron, and I had to lock up my desk because my things would get stolen throughout the day. She would run around the school, and it's not like I can run after her because I have another class of, I have a full classroom of kids. So it was just a lot of different aspects that went into that last year of teaching that really made my mental health take a big hit. And I usually don't necessarily, and all the way like through my life, I wouldn't say that I'm a person that has struggled with anxiety or anything like that. I'm not a crier. I don't really show a lot of emotions on my sleeve, and I cried a lot that year. And like that Christmas break was really rough on me and my husband because it just like I was like dreading going back to school, and I just didn't feel like my heart was in it anymore. And so supportive of, he's like, if you don't want to do this anymore, if this is not the right place for you, then don't do it, because it's not worth it to stay in a job that's going to make you this unhappy when there are so many other things that you could explore. And it took me a long time to pull the trigger on that because I'm a planner. I don't like to step out of that plan. If I don't have a plan, that's what makes me spiral and leads me into an anxiety attack. So the thought of resigning from this job, trying to figure out what my next move in was absolutely terrifying to me. So it took a long time of pros and cons of figuring out what my next move was. And was it worth staying in this job that was in this moment making me unhappy? But then you play the what if game of like, well, what if next year's better? What if I have better students, and it just, at the end of it, it was just, it's not worth it. And I put my resignation in. It finished out the school year, but let my principal know at the spring break
portion of the year that I was done and I was not returning. But the interesting thing I feel like about this part of my journey is that I was voted teacher of the year for my building the same year that I ended up resigning.
Wow.
Mm.
At that point, did you know what your next move was going to be?
No, I did not know what my
Wow.
next move would be. And that, like, I was so terrified. And I mean, I would come home. My husband's name is Mikey. So Mikey would be like, he's like, just, take some time for yourself. You don't have to figure this out right now. I can't do that. I don't know how to settle and like have downtime for myself. So, I mean, every day I was like looking at different options of, what could I do for my next job? Cause I just felt like I had to have a job. Like that was my expectation. I need to be doing something. So to not have a plan was really scary for me. I would say it probably took, let's see, spring break is in March. I would say probably by April, beginning of May, I had figured out my plan of becoming a dog trainer. And so, because I remember finishing out the school year, like knowing this is what I was going to spend my summer doing to get my certification. So, I mean, a month doesn't sound like a long time. It was in Taryn's brain, it was like years trying to, making that decision of figuring out what was next. But it was like the second that I decided that I wanted to be a dog trainer, it's like I felt so at ease. And it was like a breath. I could take a long, deep breath. It's like, I was like, this makes sense for me. Not only does it make sense and like, I'm going to have some type of job stability, but like, I am so passionate about this and this is what I want to pursue.
I want to give, I was going to say, I want to give a big kudos to you because as a planner myself, going into the decision-making process, not knowing what's on the other side is probably enough to just send you into just pure panic. You trusted yourself, and I think that's the very important lesson here in all of this is that you know what you're capable of, you know what your passions are, and leaving teaching is a lot of times it's unspoken too. Like you have this emotional connection to students, but you have to take care of yourself first, right? Like you at the end of the day owe nobody anything regardless of their age. Like you only owe yourself happiness. And so kudos to you honestly for making that change and making that transition. I can't even imagine the just like physical relief it was to turn in your notice.
You hit the nail on the head of like, it was, I mean, that was my biggest reason to not leave was the students and the relationships that I had built. And I didn't want to leave them, but I mean, it was one of the first times in my life because I feel like I'm a very stable person and people can rely on that of me. So I don't necessarily put myself first in a lot of situations. So if it's going to come between me and the students, like, I'm going to put the students first every time. But then it was an argument of like, well, I'm not my best self. I'm not doing my best job teaching because I'm not happy with where I'm at. And so I don't feel like I'm doing them the service that they deserve because my heart's not in it anymore. So when that kind of came to the forefront of my mind, it was like, well, then I do need to get out because I feel like I'm not doing as much good for them as I could if I'm not 100% in this.
That's totally true. We've had a few teachers turned something else and the conversation is similar pretty much everywhere. So I'm proud of you and you should be proud of yourself for putting yourself first. But that summer, what was it like? You mentioned certifications. What was the process of building your business, but then also to becoming a certified dog trainer?
Yeah. So I decided, I told you, like you guys mentioned my logo and the ears of my dog. So I have 3 dogs right now. I have a 6.5-year-old pit bull who is a rescue, a 4.5-year-old Great Dane, and then I have a 2-year-old. I call her a thing. She's 8 pounds. She's 2 years old. She looks like she's 20. And she's just like this tiny little Spitfire that she was our foster fail. It took us like 2 weeks for her to be in our home. But at the time I decided to become a trainer, I just had my pit bull and my Great Dane. My pit bull's name is Sinclair. And when we got him, my husband and I, we got engaged, moved in together, and got Sinclair all within the same weekend. And so since
Wow.
it just, yeah, we move fast. But I mean, and I say move fast, I mean, we were dating for, almost 2 years before we got engaged and stuff, but it was just everything kind of happened that same weekend. But we got Sinclair when he was 6 months old, and became very apparent very quickly the anxiety that he was going through. I mean, he wouldn't even go outside to go to the bathroom because he was just terrified of everything. Every single thing in the world was a threat. So that first, I was still teaching at the time, but it was him and I in a 1-bedroom apartment with all the windows closed because he couldn't handle anything. So we became very bonded. He went to a 3-week like stay away training program that changed his life. I mean, there are still a lot of things that he will be scared of till the end of time, but he has done a complete 180 and is, a brand new dog after doing this training program. So, I mean, that was 5 years ago from this present day that he did that training program. And I was always the one that kind of continued his training coming home. So when I made the decision to become a dog trainer, I was out taking him for a walk, and he's got his muzzle on because he's muzzle trained, but he loves the muzzle because he knows that means he gets to go out and do fun things. So we're going on a walk, and like we're walking around the park, and there's other distractions and stuff, and he's listening to me, he's doing his expectations and stuff. And it kind of dawned on me. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to work with dogs like Sinclair. I mean, I'm absolutely obsessed with dogs, always have been. And I want to spend my time with dogs like him. So the original idea was that I wanted to open a daycare for dogs like Sinclair who are reactive and anxious and can't handle a typical daycare setting. Like my 2 girls go to daycare at least once a week and they love it, and they can play with all the other dogs. They love the humans and everything. Sinclair can't do that. He can't handle that normal atmosphere. And so I wanted to open a daycare for dogs like him and give dog parents a place to take their dogs throughout the day where they can still hang out, they can still have playtime, but it's on an individual basis and they don't have to worry about conflicts with other dogs. So with that being the goal, that's why I decided to get certified, because I thought people would be more willing to work with me if I had some kind of certification to my name of, I've done the work. I do have practice at this. So that summer, Sinclair actually tore both of his knees and had to have a double knee surgery. So he had like a 12-week recovery process, and he couldn't do stairs. We literally had the sling over his hips to get him inside and outside. And I mean, poor guy couldn't stay in the living room by himself. So I slept on the couch in the living room with him in a pen on the floor for 12 weeks. And I spent that time getting certified. So it was nice because I had some downtime of, he couldn't do anything. So I'm helping him recover. But like, it was a reminder right there in front of me of like, this is why I want to do this. Cause not only do I want to help other dogs and give other outlets like that, but like, I want to continue with him, especially after being down for 12 weeks, who knows what his personality, his socialization is going to be like. So let's get him back to the dog he was before. So I finished my certification and just kind of like realized that it would be a big undertaking, especially just leaving a career of trying to open a business, that kind of, brick and mortar type of business by myself. Couldn't do it. So it became very apparent of how much I appreciated and enjoyed the client face-to-face work. So that's when I started. It was November of 2022 that I finished my certification and decided that I was going to open my own training business and everything that I do is in home. So I go to clients and work in their homes or do field trips rather than them coming to me, because that's where you see the behaviors happen.
I don't know if you noticed this, but the way that you talk about this, like your whole aura has changed. It is so apparent that this is your passion and like what you love to do. Like I heard the passion and the excitement for teaching, but you just light up when you talk about this. I think that was so cool to just like see that shift. I don't know if anyone else is going to notice that, but it was very apparent to me.
And I felt it too. Like I said, it was like, it was an epiphany when I'm walking Sinclair and I was like, oh my God, like this is it. This is what I feel like I was made to do. And, and even in my, like on my website and stuff, we started the bio from saying from 2 legs to 4. Cause I'm technically like, I'm still a teacher. I'm just teaching those with 4 legs instead of 2. So I still get to use the background that I created for myself and worked hard for in college, but now it's just in a more enjoyable way that feels a lot more manageable, for, you know, my mental health, but then also like so, you know, rewarding and enjoyable. And I, I don't like to sit still. I don't like to, you know, don't like to not have things to do. So having this type of job where, I mean, I'm driving to and from clients all day. And extended my business and I do wedding services too. So people can hire
Oh,
me
cool.
for their wedding day if they want their dogs incorporated in walking down the aisle, their photos, whatever. They can hire me for the day. I'll go pick the dogs up, take them to
Genius.
the ceremony and pictures, take them home. So it's brought so many different opportunities for me that I wouldn't necessarily have just being in a classroom. And then I get to, you know, it opens me up to be with my own dogs for the day, which, you know, I don't have kids. My husband and I are unsure if we are going to have kids. Like, that's just not the route that we see for ourselves. So at the time being, like, my 3 dogs are my kids, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I get to spend time with them. I get to meet so many cool people and different dogs and breeds and just all these different experiences that have been just so rewarding for me.
Mm-hmm. Before the big success, sorry, Sarah. Before the big success question, looking at your business now, what has been your biggest success and your biggest opportunity?
Biggest success, I would say, like, I don't know if I could pinpoint like one. Well, I guess I could. There's a little plaque. Where's my finger? Right there.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a little plaque right here. I was actually voted best dog trainer in Johnson County for 2024.
Congrats! That's so awesome.
So I guess, like, you know, physical success would be that I have already, you know, in such a short time has gotten some successes in that sense of my business. I would say for me though, my personal biggest success is being able to go into the clients and like being able, I call it it's the light bulb moment. Like, you see it click with the dog, you see it click with the owner, and being able to turn these dogs into the type of house companion that these owners want them to be, and being able to get the check-ins from them in the, you know, after their sessions have finished, and hearing that the dogs are still adjusting well and that I was able to help them make a difference and get to where they want to be. I'd say that's even more of a success than, you know, any type of recognition, because it's so tangible, and I feel like I'm doing something. It's not necessarily for myself. I've made a success for somebody else, which is even more important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I can imagine. I feel like dog trainers are unsung heroes. Like, we had a dog trainer for Briggs, and it's the butterfly effect, right? Like, you are helping the dog, but then you're helping the owners who are then helping the people around them, and it's just like you make such a big impact on so many lives, and I imagine that's very rewarding. Heading into the success question, Taryn, how do you define success for yourself?
I define success for myself of the reactions and how I finish it with my clients. Like, if my clients are happy and they feel like that I have helped them accomplish all of the goals that we set out for ourselves in either our consultation or our first session. If they feel like we've hit that list and that their dog is where they want them to be when we finish all of our programs or packages or anything like that, if they are happy with that, then I'm happy with that, because it's not about me at the end of the day. It's about them and what they want their future with their dog to look like.
Yeah, it's like you were able to provide that value, and you can physically see it in front of you, which again, so rewarding. I love that. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to jump into some rapid fire questions. And I would say you have a very unique career path. We have not had any dog trainers on the show, so I'm very interested to hear your answers to these questions, particularly this one. What is one thing you cannot, oh my God, Sarah always screws up this question, and she has now made me start screwing up this question. You have cursed me. Okay, I'll try again. What is one thing you cannot live without during the workday?
Treats.
See, I was like, it's got to be something dog related. That's so awesome.
I like to study, so like I looked at you guys' list of questions and stuff, and it's really funny. If it comes up, I'll tell you which one it was. But my husband and I were texting about some of the questions because I was like, "What do you think they mean by this one?" But I read that one. What's the thing you can't live without? It's 100% dog treats. Like, I couldn't do my job if I didn't have my dog treats with me.
Yeah, it makes sense. Right. Yeah, you're like a dog's best friend, honestly.
First session, I'm like, I'm the treat lady. That's how you will know me. And for the rest of my time here, I am the treat lady, and you'll love me because of it.
Yes. Taryn, your favorite way to unwind after work?
Watching, binging one of our shows right now. I'm sure it's going to be funny. My husband and I are really into the 911 universe. So we're currently watching,
I love that.
911 Lone Star. But being able to come home and binge watch one of our shows and hang out with my dogs and my husband.
Oh,
Definitely.
that sounds like a lovely way to spend an
Mhm.
evening. I love that. Okay, I'm curious for this too. What is the best benefit you've ever had from a job?
This was the question.
Oh, good. Okay.
I mean, I was like, what do you think? I said, because, I feel like a lot of their interviews are more in like the corporate world. So I was like, do they mean like medical benefit? Do they mean like,
Sometimes
personal
up
benefit?
to you. Mhm.
So can't really answer to the medical benefit side because, I'm doing that part on my own now. But I'd say my personal benefit is that owning my own business like this has opened me up scheduling wise, and being able to help me create. Therapy has helped a lot too. I'm not ashamed to say that I am in therapy and it has done wonders for myself. But she and I have talked a lot about a personal work-life balance. And so being able to create my own schedule has helped me achieve that. My sister just had a baby. He's like 8 weeks now. So I have a very brand new nephew in the family. So like I was able to go to a 5-day-a-week schedule. And once she goes back to work, I get to babysit him for one of the days of the week. And so it's opened me up to being able to do other things that are rewarding in my life, not just a job.
Amazing. Hey, I love the just a job drop. Ugh,
We'll always take those.
seriously.
Not to end on like a negative, but what is a workplace pet peeve of yours?
So when I was reading these questions, I was thinking that one, teaching, if we'll go back to, if you guys don't mind if I have a teaching one
Yeah.
instead. One of my biggest pet peeves as a teacher was when some teachers, and there's no shame to it, like I'm not judging you, it's just something that I couldn't do myself, but when teachers address their students as friends, like, hey friends, I
Got
I
it.
couldn't do it. I couldn't.
I think,
Yeah.
and then in
Boundary
the corporate
setting.
world, people will be like, that's when they address their colleagues as family. So there's some correlation there that I 100% agree with.
And again, some people, that's how they communicate with their students. I was not that type of communicator. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Totally. Taryn, thank you so much for being
Yes,
here.
thank
It's
you.
so fascinating listening to your career evolution. And again, hearing it from a business owner and a unique perspective that we haven't had previously. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you guys for having me. I always like to explain, my journey and where I got to where I was. So thank you so much for this opportunity. It was awesome.
Absolutely. And thanks again for reaching out to us. We'll be sure to include all the places you can find Taryn Tyler and her business for dog training as well. We've got a lot of Kansas City listeners and a lot of people with a lot of dogs. So hit up Taryn. She's incredible. Thank you so much for your time. And remember, everybody, it's literally just a job.